keep the cat that I dissect for your table semester, but it's up to you, whatever. But this cat and the other cat that I've done already have really nice thymus glands. So here's the thymus gland right here. And what we're gonna do is just reflect it back, but you want it, it'll fall apart if you get abusive with it, so be kind of gentle. I don't remember that any of you guys are particularly hard on the cats. I had some students in the past that have been. Okay, so here we have the heart, and you can see there's a red vessel right here. That's where the sulcus, the interventricular sulcus is. See how it's oblique in the cat, just like in the cow heart. So this would be what chamber? Right ventricle. And then this would be the left ventricle. There's the apex. Okay. And then this blue thing would be right atrium. And the one over here would be the left atrium. Now, you see how this has got a little bit of red in it? The red is because the red dye has come back from the lungs and into the atrium. And over here, the blue dye came from the vena cava and down into the right atrium. So these are kind of already color-coded for you, which is really kind of nice. All right, so we move the thymus out of the way, and we see this looks kind of like a Y here. See the Y? So this would be the stem of the Y. Everybody with me? Mm-hmm. What's the stem of the Y? Cranial vena cava. And you see this vessel right here? There's one. And it's actually kind of going through the thymus. This is the internal thoracic or internal mammary vein. Sorry, a little rusty here. Now, right up here, you see there's another Y. This is the external jugular vein, and this is the subclavian vein. And they come together, they're starting to form the brachiocephalic vein. Now, there's only one brachiocephalic artery, but there are two brachiocephalic veins, a left and a right. And right here, there's another blue vessel coming into the brachiocephalic, see it? That's the vertebrocostocervical trunk. So that name sounds kind of imposing, but it's really not as bad as it sounds. It tells you where it comes from. So vertebral is the vertebral vein, which runs down through the vertebral foramina of the cervical vertebrae. Costocervical says it comes from the costo, ribs, cervical, neck, right? Some of your other class said, okay, I'm from the cervix. I don't think so. So the cervix is actually part of the uterus, and this cervix we're referring to here is the neck. The cervix of the uterus gets named that because it looks like a neck. It gets narrow. Okay, now in the old days, we used to cut this vena cava, but I found that if you do that, it makes a mess. So rather than do that, we just pull it out of the way. And we have a big red vessel. This is the third branch off the aorta. And this vessel is the brachiocephalic. Left or right? There's only one. Two veins, one artery. Everybody with me? And then this kind of looks like a pitchfork up here. We have this branch going off to the right. That's the right subclavian. We have a branch in the middle. That's the right common carotid. Right, I can't quite get it. Wow. Right there. And then we have a branch going off to the left. That's the left common carotid. Okay? So right subclavian is to the right. The one that goes to the left is the left common carotid, and the one in the middle is the right common carotid. Then this branch right over here is the left subclavian. Left subclavian comes from the aorta. And the left subclavian is going to have four branches you're responsible for. One of them is this internal thoracic artery or internal mammary artery. Either one is fine. Those are used in cardiac bypass surgery because you can cut them off at the end near the sternum and then sew them into the heart, and they're getting blood off the subclavian, so that works out. The same vessels are on the right side coming from the right subclavian. I will never tag those, and the reason is that they're all jammed together because the right subclavian is pretty short. The left subclavian is a lot longer, so you can see them a lot better. And then there are going to be another three branches. We already got the internal thoracic or internal mammary. The first branch is the vertebral. So we've got the mnemonic VCT. V is for vertebral. The next one is costocervical. It's right here. There's a red one right here. And costocervical kind of goes toward the midline of the body. You can see a little better right there. There's the second one. And then the third one is the thyrocervical. And the thyrocervical branches off and goes up here. And what remains is still subclavian. So the subclavian goes through the wall and becomes the axillary artery. And we studied that last fall in the axilla. Remember, it had 4 branches. Subscapular and the lateral thoracic and ventral thoracic. Okay, there are 2 nerves right here. One nerve is right here, and one nerve is, the light sucks over here, right there. Okay, so here's a nerve, and here's a nerve. One of them is a phrenic. Phrenic goes to the diaphragm. The other is the vagus. So the obvious question is, if I were to tag these on the lab practical, which is which? So I'm going to show you a trick. If you go up in the neck, this is the left common carotid artery up here. Got to move down a little bit, okay? And right next to it is this big nerve right here. That's the vagosympathetic trunk. And the vagosympathetic trunk is like a pair of shoes in a shoebox. So if you buy shoes and they have 2 shoes in there, they're not attached to each other, they're just in the same container. These 2 nerves, the vagus and the sympathetic trunk, are in the same container. There's some connective tissue that wraps around them. And the vagus goes down to the heart, and the sympathetic trunk runs along the vertebral border. I'll show you that in a minute. So the obvious question is, okay, now how is this going to help us with the vagus? What you do is you make this into a loop, okay? Pull it up kind of tightly. And you go down here, and if you pull a phrenic, that loop doesn't move. But if you pull a vagus, the loop moves. Do you see it move? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's how you can tell them apart. That will always work. And you might say, well, the vagus is usually medial and the phrenic is usually lateral. That's true. But on a lab practical, after about 20 people have handled it, that may not be the case. But the vagus will still be attached to the vagosympathetic trunk. Now, if we roll the cat up on its side a little bit, and we look in right along the vertebral border right here, there's a nerve. Can you see that piece of white? It's a little bit out of focus. Let's see if I can focus it better. I guess not. And you're going to have to take my word for it. There's a nerve right here. That's the sympathetic trunk. And what happens is right around the brachiocephalic, the 2 nerves separate, and the vagus goes medially and the sympathetic trunk goes laterally. We don't see the thoracic duct in this cat, but we do see some other structures. So just to help you a little bit here, we have a big tube right here. That would be the esophagus. We have a tube right here, and that would be the aorta. And then if we had the thoracic duct visible, it would be right here, and then you have sympathetic trunk. So there's a mnemonic, EATS, E-A-T-S. E is for esophagus, A for aorta, T for thoracic duct, and S for sympathetic trunk. And the last thing you have to know on this, by the way, before I move to the other side, so we get this pleura pulled back a little bit. You'll see right here, I think you maybe can see it, maybe not. Right there, see that little white line? Mm-hmm. That's the phrenic nerve coming down to the diaphragm, right? So it goes right down to the diaphragm. That's the left phrenic nerve. The right phrenic nerve runs on the surface of the caudal vena cava. So does somebody have gloves on? No. All right. Leah's on fire over here. You only need one probably, if you just hold that back. Okay. So if we pull this back, see this blue vessel coming up right here? It looks almost like an upside down J. That's the azygous vein. The azygous vein receives blood from every subcostal groove. And it also brings blood from the abdomen. So if there are 2 vessels primarily bringing blood through the diaphragm back toward the thoracic cavity. One is the azygous and the other is the inferior vena or caudal vena cava in the cat. if the caudal vena cava collapses because of organ pressure, which actually probably doesn't sound like that's possible, but it's actually pretty easy because there's not much pressure in the veins coming back. So if an organ pushes against it, it just collapses. The blood can come up through the azygos. That's an alternate route. So the analogy is sort of like 295 and 95, right? If there's an accident on 95, you can go 295 to get to Providence. It's sort of the same thing. And you also find a sympathetic trunk over here on this side. Okay. So that's pretty much what you're going to be responsible for thoracic vessels. I'll try to get the other cats finished up for next week.